I am new to Gemini Inc. And I teach creative writing. I am mostly a poet, but I've taught all different genres. I also I do visual writing, and so I also like to teach visual writing and also hybrid writing. So writing that mixes poetry, prose, and visual elements. Um, and yeah, that's me. And I'm really thrilled to meet all of you.
Thank you.
I'm Andrea Sanderson. I go by Andrea or vocab, and if you don't say Andrea, like Andrea, it's fine with me. I don't really care. I'll be Andrea. It's fine. I am a 39-year-old person that collects bobbleheads, and I've been working for Gemini since 2009, and I'm really happy to be here in training, even if it's a virtual training. But I do miss our tacos and.
To quote Eddie Vega, our Payless tacos, because they're from Taco Cabana. You know, that's what he calls tacos from Taco Cabana, Payless tacos.
That's hilarious.
She's also San Antonio Poet Laureate. That's right.
Oh.
I'll go next.
Yeah.
My name is Amina. I teach visual arts and I do a lot of literary visual art workshops at Gemini Inc. I haven't been counting, but I think it's been a year or so that I've been on board. I've recently left teaching full time to focus more on my art business and my everything creative that I can't do when I'm stuck in the classroom. So that's me.
Thank you, Amina. Go ahead, Carol.
Well, my computer looks like it's running slow, but I can't win like. I'm Carol Gonzalez. I've been with Gemini Inc. since 2016, and vocab actually was the one that encouraged me to apply back then. So thank you for that. I mostly work with poetry, and kind of like you, Shira, I like to incorporate like photography or any kind of like, get their hands dirty with some creativity along with their writing. But yeah, that's me.
And she is currently teaching for us.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you, Florida. Yeah, currently teaching. I've mostly been in the elementary and middle schools, but I have worked in the hospital before and with the children on probation as well. Thank you.
And last but definitely not least.
Hi, everybody. I'm Erika de la Rosa. I am a full-time teaching artist, and I've been with Gemini Inc. since the summer of 2013. The programs that I work with currently are the Bowden Academy new program, Camelot Academy, and I also work the Crier Rehab Center with Jim. I would say my fortes are poetry, spoken word, performance, and also playwriting. And now I like to claim multimedia artist because I like storytelling through video, photography, but also the visual arts and music. Yeah. I was gonna say check it.
Well, we're about to do a check-in, Erika, and yeah, definitely that's your influence. So again, I can't tell you, yes, I'm sad that we don't have the tacos. There isn't a huge spread of food in the office. We don't get to we're not gonna get to play games the way we normally do, although I promise I'll try to make this as fun as I can. I miss you all. I am dying to see you all in person. I'm dying to hug you all. Of course, only if you want me to. But I also need to say the folks that have been teaching for us this year, it has been a hell of a year. And I am very proud of all the stuff that we've done this year. So a big applause for them. let me tell you, the people that teach for us, they're made of grit because it's been a hell of a year. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and let's get started. So I do have slides here that we are gonna go through. Let's see, view, present. So today's training is focused on who we are, what we do, and how do we talk about it. Now, before we jump in, I do want to have a quick check-in. This is a nod to Erika and Clint that always do check-ins. I want you to take a moment and in 3 words, describe your quarantine so far. So I'm going to give you a couple minutes to think about that. And in 3 words, describe your quarantine.
Are we putting this in the chat or are we gonna?
No, we're going to go around and say and share. When you're done, can you just give me a thumbs up? Can also give me a thumbs up in the chat. I know I can't see everybody on my screen. Okay. I'm gonna tell you the truth. I cheated because I did this last time. This is the second time we're doing the same training, so I'm gonna just use the same one I used last time. Troubleshooting like hell. And I think Erika and Carol can attest to that. So let's go ahead and go around. Jim, you wanna go next?
Was this meant to describe our teaching in quarantine or just our
Anything.
quarantine?
Anything.
Okay. Home, disconnect, writing.
Thank you.
I would say reflective, refreshing, and adventurous.
Thank you.
Should I go next?
Sure.
I would say surreal, pivoting, resourceful.
I can go. For mine, I put transformational, hopeful, and chaotic.
I can go next. I would say touching, tearful, taskful, or tasking, either one.
Thank you.
For mine, I'll put exhausting, challenging or challenge driven, everlasting.
I can go next. For mine, I put knotted, grace, resilience.
Is that everybody? I think Shira, have you gone? Oh, I can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry. I put tense, limbo, and challenging.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So again, it's been a very hard year. I'm not gonna lie. I know that my teaching artists have had some lows. I've had some lows too, but I think we've definitely had some highs. And right now, I will tell you, we're in the process of getting the Camelot book together, and we're kind of like, all these workshops are coming to fruition. And again, every piece of writing that the kids created this year, that our students created this year, is one victory for us. Every single piece. And I hope all of the teaching artists see that. I know it has not been ideal, but I am incredibly proud of the work that we've done this year. So big kudos and snaps to them. All right, let's go ahead and move on. I am recording this session. 2 of our teaching artists have oh, by the way, real quick, happy Mother's Day to the moms. And if you're not a mom, happy Mother's Day to your mom, or, you know, if you're a tia and you're a mom number 2, happy Mother's Day to you too. So happy Mother's Day. We are recording this session because I had 2 teaching artists that can't make it, and they do want to make sure that they don't miss this training. So let's go ahead and jump in. Actually, 2 more things. 1, you don't need a timesheet for this. I'm keeping track of attendance, so you don't have to submit a timesheet for this. The second thing is there will be a raffle. So at the after this training is over, I'm going to throw everyone's names of who is present today, and we're gonna you can win an Amazon gift card. All right. So let's go ahead and jump in. Oops. Okay. What are the objectives for today? 1, learn how to talk about Gemini Inc.'s mission, vision, and values. Understand the 4 pillars of craft and how they look at different levels. Explore the 4 pillars of craft and how they can shape your lesson plans going forward. So those are the 3 goals for today. Here is a quick overview of our agenda. I am keeping track of time. We will have a 10-minute break around the hour mark. So please know that will be coming up. This is kind of an overview, and let's jump in. All right, so who we are and what we do. Now, I know that the teaching artists that have been with us, that the veteran teaching artists saw something like this. I want to say 18 months ago, we had a training, was the last training we had in person. And we showed our new mission and vision and all that. Well, we revised it, okay? And why did we revise it? Because just like we're all writers here, when you're trying to tell a story, it takes a while to really get down to what you're trying to say. So that is why you're going to see a new draft. You're going to be like, whoa, this is different. I didn't see this before. This is different. That is why, because it is vital that Gemini Inc. tell our story accurately for a number of reasons. Alexander, do you want to speak about kind of the process that went into this before we jump into the mission and vision? You're muted.
Thanks. I mean, believe it or not, Gemini Inc. is 27 years old. And we probably reached a point about 1.5 years ago where we had to take a hard look at things and really look at long-term sustainability. And a part of that was, are we really clear about 1, our impact, and 2, what our mission is? We're not alone, but a lot of arts organizations have a hard time sometimes proving their impact. And our goal is we're not something on the sidelines. Writing's not just a hobby. It has a true impact on the lives of the youth we serve and the adults we serve. So this was kind of in our brains when we were coming up with a revised mission statement. We had our board take part in this. We had kind of a little think tank with staff was a part of it. I was a part of it. And so our goal was, if someone doesn't know who we are, can we say this mission statement and will they be able to find it accessible? Will it get them more interested in us? And then the other goal was, does this really show clearly what we do? And so it did take a long time. We had many different iterations. And then I think the final tweak is what got us the mission statement you're going to see today. And we feel like this one's sticking. But our whole goal is to not just put out a mission statement there and say we're done. This is a deep kind of almost thesis statement for everything we do. So we're searching for real alignment. So we're using this mission statement. It's going to show up in how we write grants. It's going to show up in how we talk about ourselves. You'll see our values that we created after this new mission are further alignment. Because if we're not acting on a daily basis in a way that really supports what we believe in, that's a problem. Okay, so those values are about the day-to-day reality of Gemini Inc. And that's aligning with the new mission. So I hope this doesn't sound too abstract, but the idea is it's kind of seeping through everything we do in the organization. So it's a real kind of organic way of being in the world about how we teach the craft of writing. So I'm not going to say anything else because you'll see the 4 pillars is a part of really kind of aligning and deeply showing our mission in every way.
And without further ado, here's our vision. We envision a world where all people experience the power of the writing arts. Mission. We teach the craft of writing to people of all skill levels so they can bring their stories to life. Now, we have our values here. I'm going to give you a moment to just read them. I don't want to read them to you, so I'm going to give you a few minutes to read them, and then I'm going to ask for your impressions. So any initial thoughts, reactions?
I have a question, especially on the one that says promote excellence. So I know through several classes that I've done that we take a lot of data to compare and analyze to see how participants are improving and such. But do we have a way where we can visualize that, like promo videos or impact statements or something from individuals taking our courses so that we can actually see that data and it's not just like numbers?
So that's a great question, Amina. So one thing that has changed since, I know the last time you taught for us was at Judson, Idea Judson, the evaluation tools, and we are gonna look at a few today, have changed. They are more aligned. I will tell you that some of the work that Sophia is going to be doing with me this summer is going to be at making sure that everything is, we're going to look at those data tools again. This is the first year that we're using some of those data tools. I'm sure that we're going to get feedback about those data tools. So we're going to be looking at that. And then the other thing is we actually have one intern that's going to be working with Alexandra, who's an Excel expert. And she's going to help create visuals that show the impact so that we can all see, because again, it's important not just for our funders, not just for our partners, but for us internally to look and see, are we doing what we say we're doing? Maybe we're doing one thing great, but we have to work on this other section, so definitely that's a work in progress. Does that answer your question?
It does, in that aspect, as far as it being like an internal visualization for us to see, but then also as we're promoting it to the community, having like testimonial videos or something like that.
So one thing, I think that's a great thing too, for sure, like Alexandra said earlier, the biggest thing that we're trying to do is to show funders okay, this is what we do, and this is the proof that we do what we say we're doing, right? So absolutely, that is a huge piece of the puzzle. I love the idea of the videos, like for testimonials. That's something that Anissa and internally, like the staff, we've been talking about. She's been talking about like being able to capture stories. There is a new data tool that we put in place this year that is meant to capture some of that like qualitative data, you know, the stuff that's not in the numbers. So thank you for that recommendation. It's a work in progress. We're trying to get there. And I would love to hear your thoughts when we look at that tool.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Can I pipe in a second, Florinda? These are great ideas, and one positive thing that's come out of the pandemic, and I think we're really at the early stages of this, is really using our YouTube channel more. The partner classes, all of you, the partner class teachers have done great teaching videos. I love them, and that's on YouTube. And another thing is these kinds of things you're talking about. I mean, I think there's a wealth of potential there, short promo videos. So, yeah, just long way of saying that's a great suggestion. And I agree. One of our goals is to amplify how we show our impact. So we are more than happy to hear ideas on new and different ways to do that.
I mute. I mute myself. Something that I'm thinking about is I've been looking a lot at this burgeoning, I'll call it movement, but the NEA and you know, the rescue arts stuff that's happening is also putting a kind of primacy on art as community building. So art in public health, art in medicine, and you know, other arts are already, I mean, they can stand becoming more active and respected, but other arts as healing, you know, as healing arts are more accepted. And writing and healing arts is something that is getting more attention with the pandemic. And so when I'm looking at the Amplify communities, I keep looking at this, and it feels right now that it's emphasizing how Gemini Inc. works with more with individuals. I'm just saying that I feel like you might be able to do something to push a little more on not just accepting many, but also actually being part of the work of bringing different communities together, you know, like within the collaboration. So so emphasizing that, because there's also you know, grant money that is available to do this, you know, more and more because of the pandemic.
So I will say one thing that was very hard, as you can imagine, we went through I don't know how many drafts of the values, you know, and it was very hard to cover everything. Just because part of the thing that I think has made it very difficult to tell our story is that there's just so many facets to what we do. So we really tried to boil it down, but I think that that's a great observation, Shira. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I hop in just for a second? It is a great observation. I think we will be talking about partners and other kind of supportive verbiage around our programming. Shira, even if it's not showing up per se in these bullet points here. And we are looking into grant opportunities. We already write grants around arts and healing, but I hear that the literary arts is the most underfunded of all the arts. Okay, so there is advocacy work to be done to do just what you're talking about, Shira, raise its profile. in terms of how it segues with other parts of people's lives, like health, medicine, etc. So, hey, if you hear of any grants, just let us know. And that's an area we care about a lot. So I'm glad you mentioned it.
I will do that because I'm very interested in this.
Thank you. What other initial thoughts? How do these values make you feel?
I will say I appreciate under the amplification, mentioning the follow through, because I really think that that's important to note that there's consistency and accountability within what we're doing. I think it's pretty transparent. When I first started reading, I was like, oh, great, we're trying to say we're inclusive. That's good. But, but as I go through, they've become more genuine to me and then especially when you get down to the taking joy in service, I definitely appreciate that. The fact that you mentioned passion and, because we want people to know that this is not only educational, but it's interesting. And we're here to stimulate people and then, like you say, empower them. And I mean, it has some great keywords in there, but then there's some other ones that are just way thoughtful. And I appreciate, I appreciate these values.
Thank you.
I appreciate, just kind of to jump on what vocab said, I appreciate the statement as well, because it doesn't seem like a shell, like this organization, and you have to have a mission statement, but it sounds like people coming together. Like this is a body of people that are coming together with their skills and their different passions to make this happen, rather than this machine.
And just to add to that too, the last one, undertake joy in service, we listen to and learn from each other and those we serve, like that collaboration. I mean, it happens with our students and we're trying to promote that always, but also amongst us, and like continuing to collaborate, bounce ideas off each other and working together to just ensure that success. Like, I appreciate that's a part of what we're looking at.
Thank you. Any other thoughts before we move on?
I like the way that that the word polish happens instead of revision.
Yeah, we're getting there. We'll get to polish. Don't worry. We're going to jump into those 4 pillars. Any other comments, questions about these values? So one thing to know is, again, like the mission and the vision and these values is a way for us to really, again, articulate specifically who we are and what we hold dear. And one thing that you can expect going forward, now that you've seen these values, and by the way, I know that you all are taking notes, but I will be sharing the PowerPoint with you afterwards. So if you're like, oh my God, I didn't get to write the values down, I don't know what I'm going to do now, I'm going to share it with you. So you'll have a chance to look at it. So I know that many of our instructors have come to us, like Amina, through word of mouth. I know that our community is vast and there's a lot of tendrils going out throughout the community. So keep these in mind. If you see someone that you think you want to try to bring in or that you think would make a great teacher, keep these values in mind, because this is going to be what we use when hiring anybody, whether it's a staff member, if we're bringing on a board member, or we're hiring a teacher or anything like that. When we're looking at our partnerships, these values are going to be integral to making sure that we're connecting with people and organizations that align with who we are, right? So that's kind of what I wanted to end on these values. Any other comments, questions before we move on?
I was just going to add that these values will also be used for like reviews with staff and everything, like it doesn't mean anything if we're not living and breathing these ourselves. And we're going to be growing into some of these, and obviously there's going to be lessons to be learned along the way, and we would love feedback from any of you in terms of I don't know, ways to further empower ourselves through the use of these values, and ways that we can use them even more. Like, so it's a living, breathing thing, these values, and we want your, how you experience them, we want to, hear from you about, because it's all helpful for us.
Yeah, and just to go off of what Alexandra is saying, speaking of that, I mean, you all are the boots on the ground. You all are the ones like have right there, like on the front line. So what you have to say about these values is absolutely pivotal. So if you see anything or you have any questions about anything, like I want you to feel that you can come to us and talk to us about it. If you see anything with our partners, I will tell you we've had some experiences where things were maybe not as aligned as we would have hoped for. So if you see things like that, we want you to feel that you can come to us and we can have a conversation about that. The other thing that I wanted to kind of, and I want to take a moment to really give a major kudos to Carol, because we're about to go into the 4 pillars. And I want you to know, I created this 4 pillars presentation because of a very important question that Carol asked me. Huge applause and kudos to Carol for the 4 pillar section. Okay, so before we jump into the 4 pillars, I showed the 4 pillars to a lot of the instructors that are teaching for us right now. I kind of had like mini trainings with them where we looked at the new data tools for this year. And before we get into the 4 pillars, well, let me see what slide is next real quick. Oh, actually, hold on. Put a pause on the 4 pillars. I forgot what came next. Let's look at our strategic vision real quick. So this is to teach, sorry, I jumped ahead of myself. So we are working on also articulating our strategic vision. This is our goal for now for 2024. There is an asterisk next to that number because of COVID, and we don't know if, as I'm sure you know, we want to reach all the people we can. It's really hard because of COVID. So just keep that in mind. Any questions about this strategic vision?
Can I add something quickly?
Sure.
Just so you know, in 2020, we reached about 2,500 people. Okay. That is partner classes and public classes together. We are doing a 3-year strategic plan. Staff board are working on it now. It will begin in January 2022 and be for 3 years. What is a strategic plan? It's a very practical blueprint for like probably the top 3 goals we would like to achieve by the end of 2024. So that 12,000 could stay. It might be slightly modified. And I just wanted you to know that the mission and vision you just saw, and the values, that's public and partner classes. And the 4 pillars you're about to see are going to be used in partner classes and public classes. Mm-hmm. So one thing that's happening is an alignment across all programming and workshops in how we teach creative writing. And one thing we discovered in our process getting to this point is that there's a lot of common ground between how we teach in public and partner. And we were able to see that highlighted, in the brainstorming we were doing. And the 4 pillars is for all of our workshops.
Right.
So, but yeah, so this is just so you get a little context. It's a 3-year plan that we're gonna begin in 2022.
And obviously y'all are a huge part of that plan because since you all serve so many students. We also have our supportive verbiage. I'll go ahead and read it to you. Everyone has a story. We believe writing that story is powerful. When people learn the 4 pillars of writing, they learn the power of the craft of writing. When they learn the power of the craft of writing, they bring their story to life. Our strategic vision is to teach 12,000 people how to bring their stories to life by 2024. Any questions, comments, reactions? No? So I know we talked about the elevator speech, the last presentation that we did. So the elevator speech is, let's say that you're out at the bar, right? And you get in an elevator with some hot person and they're like, hey, who are you? What do you do? And you're like, oh, hey, I teach for Gemini. Or Erika's laughing. And they're like, what the heck is that? You work at a tattoo parlor? And you say no. And you say, we help people bring their stories to life. What? How do you do that? We teach them how to write. Okay, so that's, I think, simple. We have been confused for a tattoo parlor many a time, and I think it's funny that this actually shows a guy with a bunch of tattoos, but anyway. So that's what you're gonna say when the hot person in the elevator asks you what Gemini Ink is, okay? Any questions, comments?
It's the hot, rich person in the elevator.
Okay, yes, the hot, rich person in the elevator. Thank you, Erika. Okay, now our programs, like how do we talk about our programs? We talk about it at really 3 main branches, which is creative writing classes, because partner and public, essentially it's the same thing. Autograph and Inkstravaganza, okay? And again, public classes are tuition-based, fair cost. Partner classes, you know what that is, formerly known as Writers and Communities. Questions, comments? No? Okay, so let me check the time. It's 1:40. So I want to talk about our workshop model. This is what you're already familiar with. Read it, write it, and share it, right? So what does read it mean? It's that mentor text or that writing model, and the students are guided through a close reading and analysis of the text. Write it. Students are given a writing prompt related to the mentor text writing model and asked to apply a specific craft tool. And then of course the sharing component, which is, the students getting feedback, them sharing their work in class. And then of course that big final celebration where they get to read their work to their family, friends, community, and then of course the publications. I am so excited about the fact that I feel like almost all of our workshops are ending with a publication now of some kind. And I find that really, really exciting. And I want you to know this: read it, write it, share it. We show this we have a partner program tour now where when we have a funder interested in us, we walk them through and they see this and they get very excited about it. So the 4 pillars. Now is when I'm going to pause, and I want to give a big kudos to Carol, and I want to kind of tell you a quick story, which is, the teachers that we're teaching this year. I met with each teaching team individually, and we were talking. I talked about the 4 pillars with them. I know that there's folks in this session today that are not currently teaching, so maybe they're not as familiar. But what happened was, a lot of the instructors were like, wait, what do you mean the 4 pillars of craft? Like, what is that? What is that? Am I gonna have to do something different? No. The 4 pillars of craft is stuff that all of you have already been doing. It's just, we gave it a name. We are articulating what you are already doing. That's where the 4 pillars of craft came from. Again, we are here talking about, what we do, wanting to show the impact, but we didn't have an articulate way of conveying exactly what was happening in the workshops. That's where the 4 pillars came from. Now, the thing that, a question that Carol came up with when I was meeting with her and Sarah, is she said, a very great question, is she said, we looked at the 4 pillars, and she said, what does this look like for kindergarten versus 3rd grade versus 5th grade versus a 7th grader versus a 12th grader versus an adult? And that is where the idea for this training came from. So Carol I feel a lot of gratitude to you for that. That is, and to me, that is proof of the importance of this two-way communication between you all and us. I want to know, hey, you have questions about something, I want to know, because then maybe other people have the same questions and we can have a training on it and we can address what those questions are. If you have feedback for us, absolutely, you all are vital to us fulfilling our mission. Like, please, as we're rolling this stuff out for the first time. I'm sure that there's going to be hiccups. There's going to be things that need to be worked on or tweaked or improved. As Alexander said, these are living, breathing things. They're not set in stone. And if you have any feedback for us, absolutely, we want to hear it. Now, it's 1:43. Let me look at my notes real quick. Before we jump into the 4 pillars, well, do you want to take your break now, or do you want me to kind of go through we all look at the 4 pillars and then take a break? What do y'all want to do? I think some people are muted. I see mouths moving, but I don't hear any noise. Do you want to look at the 4 pillars now or take a break now?
I say let's roll.
Look now.
Look now. Okay. So, form.
I'm excited now. I want to know what they are.
Okay, so I'm going to just leave it there and I'm going to let you absorb it, okay? I'm going to move on to the next one. Ambition. Language. Polish. Thoughts?
The form, the first one, is that, may you put it back on that slide real quick? So it seems like form is kind of setting the foundation of the direction of the writing. Is that right?
I would say it's, that's a great way of saying it. Foundation, I mean, form literally is the shape of something, right? And that includes the foundation, the genre, the type of writing, how you're going to structure the writing. Definitely, I think that, and this is also covers like more of the global aspect of writing, is something developed? Are you manipulating form to create meaning? Is it a circular narrative or not? Is it linear or non-linear? Does that answer your question, Amina?
Yeah, it does.
Great observation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments, reactions, questions?
A quick note is that I really appreciate how the ambition segment of this has a relational component to it as well as an individual component, like the share work with others, but also set personal writing goals, because I think that speaks a lot to our first value of amplifying communities by engaging in dialogue with them and also learning how to respond and work with students and programs as a whole.
Nice, Sophia. Thank you. It's a great observation.
I suppose another quick note could be that including publication as a goal could be a way of measuring how we end up teaching 12,000 people. Since I jotted down a couple of notes of how we could possibly think of measuring that. Would that just be attendance, or does it end up actually looking like we see these writers publish their works? So I appreciate that that's also included in there.
Thank you.
I feel like as much as we do in a session, that this is an amazing summary. Just as you were going over each point, I was just kind of flashing back to the Judson class that Andrea and I worked on together. And I could see each of these, like the steps, like you said, we were kind of already doing this and maybe not having the language for it. So there's really good placeholders. So this is a great job.
Thank you, Amina.
I love that idea of placeholders, Amina. Yeah, no, that's just great. You know, all this is great feedback. Thanks.
I think, and this, Crier, and you can agree with me or disagree with me, Erica, but I think the Crier audience is somewhat anomalous. And I think I know that part of my process is to come at many of these things through a back door. I don't approach them immediately. The first issue for me, and I do actually think for everybody, but for certainly at Crier, is trust. The second issue is expression, purely expression, self-expression, their need to get it out. And then within that framework, there is anger, fury, fear, memory, justice, fairness, all of those. And this is before, I certainly work to frame it within some of this, but it isn't where they start. And I think I just think it's and I guess if anybody who's teaching little ones can, I would think that similarly, these lofty pillars are not where your little ones start either. So I think the question, I guess I'm asking about people's strategies for getting to these things from those other issues, because I think they're very real. I know they're very real with my audience.
I think that's a good point. And I feel like it has to be a combination of how you are facilitating your workshop and recognizing where your students are in this process, because it doesn't have to be a linear thing. Like if you're noticing you're in a class with people who are really shy versus some who are super ambitious and are ready to get started, like you kind of have to take charge with that and kind of recognize where the energy is and maybe use these not as it has to be this way, but as a guideline of how to direct that energy.
So I think that's a great point, Jim. And I almost feel tempted to add in self-expression to ambition. But I can talk to Alexandra about that. So I think that I think these are not as lofty as they might feel right now. The next part of the training is going to look at want to talk about what does this look like with a kindergartner who still is developing writing skills, basic literacy skills. I think that absolutely it's applicable at all levels. I definitely think that you do this. I know this is not covering, one of the things that I think is the X factor that's not covered by the 4 pillars, it's something else, is the relationship building, that you all have with your students. Like, and I know that that is a huge component of the work we do at Crier, where you're just trying to get the walls to come down. And I would say that's kind of a separate thing. I would say it's more about relationship building. Now, to give you an idea, when I do have like potential partners or funders that are, and we're walking through the program tour, and I'm happy to share that with you if you want to take a look at that. I do talk about relationships, and I say we're not just here to improve language and improve like all these measures and things like that, the academics, blah, 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 blah. Like, ultimately, none of it is going to happen if we don't have a relationship with the student. Like, none of it is going to happen if that's not there first.
Well, and I would actually add, and I would add it back in the vision part, that it's also, it's not only, it's maintaining relationships with organizations. I mean, I was very heartened in our meeting with Crier to hear how committed they are to us.
Mhm.
You know, and that's a matter of something we've built. I mean, you know, and that's actually measurable over 10 or more than 10 years that we've been doing that program. I wanted to give you just a quick example of what I mean by the backdoor mode, because I was looking at form, thinking about what I do with my kids at Crier, and when I ask them, when I give them Issa's haiku, now listen, you watermelons, if any thieves come, turn into frogs. And I ask them to drop out the nouns and replace them with their own nouns. First of all, we get to what nouns are, but after, which most of them should know by then, but we also, two things happen. One is that they are sunk into the center of the haiku as a form. And the second thing that happens is that they are caught within the web of the real meaning of that haiku, which is about transformation. And then when I give them so much depends upon a red wheelbarrow, and they drop out the nouns, they are sunk into the middle of free verse. Geez, how does this stuff work? And they're confronted with the concept of dependence. What does it mean for something to depend on something else? And how does that fit into a poem? So that, in my defense of how I use form, I guess all I'm saying is that I don't start with the form, I start with the mentor text and with the appending of it for them to get in. And I don't even particularly spend much time on recognition of what the form is, which might be quite, you might smack me in the head over that one.
Can I pipe up here? I mean, I think what you're saying is beautiful, Jim. I think you're doing an amazing job of teaching form. You don't have to change a thing, mister. It's like, you know, remember that the 4 pillars work with the read it, write it, share it. And I think the way you're sinking them into the middle of the form through the mentor text, it's like perfect for that. So if anything, it's like applause, Jim. I mean, you want to make their form doesn't mean anything if people can't feel intimate with it. If it doesn't mean something, the last thing we want you to do is feel like you have to fill your class with abstract words to meet the 4 pillars. Right. No, these are your This is a little guide through just all the stages of the writing process, and you are going to be using your creativity every day to make it just right for your students. If anything, we want to hear how you're doing it, and the idea of self-expression, maybe that's the ambition for a choir class. They just start expressing themselves. That's fantastic. So I think that's where your expertise and your passion, which is a part of our values, is so important, because you're going to bring these aspects of craft to life in the only way it makes any sense to your students. And that's going to look incredibly different for who you're reaching out to. So if anything, I'm heartened by what you just said. I think it was a beautiful example of how to teach form.
Yeah.
So not to go off anymore, but that's just some of my first, to go off on that, some first impressions after listening to you, Jim.
Well, and one thing I want to say about ambition is that these are umbrella terms, and these umbrellas that we created are meant to encompass the experience and the skill level of all of our students. So this could be somebody who has already published 2 novels and is working on their 3rd. This can also mean a child who is terrified of writing because they've been drilled and killed so much with the STAR test, and they have anxiety every time they have to write something, and they're writing 1 sentence, and that's their ambition, is to write 1 sentence on the page. This should encompass that child and this other person who is working on their 3rd book. The goals, the thing you have to understand about the goals is, and it's not like I'm going to come into your class and be like, oh, well, we expect for, all 15 of your kids to, have this writing goal here. No, we understand each individual, they're coming with their own skill level. They're coming with their own experience. You're going to be helping set individual goals with your students. I know to give a beautiful example of a goal that I saw at Idea Judson, and I loved that Vocab and Amina did this. They asked the students, okay, tell us what you want the goals to be for this workshop. What do you want to leave with? One of the things the kids asked for, I was so surprised. This was like 4 years that I've been doing this, like not a lot of things surprised me. I was surprised. One of their goals was improve their handwriting. Improve their handwriting. They were in middle school. And so what did Amina and Vocab do? They did an amazing thing. They brought in a graffiti artist to work with the kids on coming up with their name and doing their name in this like creative way. And I thought that was absolutely brilliant. That is ambition. That's the goal. That's the goal. If the goal is to put 5 words on a page, then that's what the goal is. Did they do it? Amazing, they met their goal. Is it to publish 5 books? Okay, they did it, amazing, they met their goal. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay, I do wanna be mindful, it's 2:01. So I'm gonna pop out of the presentation here. I'm gonna put a timer for 10 minutes. Go get coffee, get a snack. I know we don't have any tacos, I'm sorry. Go, attend to your biological needs, and I will see you in a few minutes, okay?
Biological needs.
Thank you for that solo vocab, love you.
I love you too. I just thought it was great.
Miranda, I'm gonna log off here because I'm actually gonna sign back on in my laptop, just let you know.
Sure, no problem, you do what you need.
Vocab, did you drop the by part and just go logical needs?
No, I didn't, but that's also a great idea as well. Because
And even our anthropological needs.
yeah, any logical needs that sometimes we think it's okay to sit somewhere when we really need to get up and do something. And with that said, I will be back because I gotta get something from my front porch.
That's an illogical need.
Let me stop my share real quick.
Hey, Alexandra, did you go away?
I think she did.
Okay.
I'm here, Jim. Sorry,
Oh, I just wanted to tell you, Alexandra, maybe I have already, that when I was working with Corey Cook at KRTU for Jazz Poetry Week, he mentioned that William is doing the chapter in the book about jazz in San Antonio.
Yeah, he's working with two musicologists at UTSA, and they're compiling essays on a book called The History of the Music in San Antonio.
Yeah, and Corey was really pleased to work with William. So
Oh, yeah, no, I'll
It's
pass
good
that
to-
on. William's super psyched. Corey's writing essays for the jazz section.
yeah,
He said he's a
great.
good writer. Yeah. And so I will definitely pass that on. Yeah, it's quite a project. It's
Yeah, it
starting to
should-
consume my husband's life, but in the best possible way.
Is that being, who's publishing that?
UTSA Libraries is
Oh, right,
publishing it.
right, right. Okay.
Yeah, and it's going to be all kinds of music, blues, gospel, Chicano soul. I mean, and then there's going to be a great website with like oral histories and everything to add to that.
That's
It's
great.
quite a project. Yeah.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Great.
And but yeah, you should talk to William about it yourself, Jim. I'm sure he'd love to tell you about it and maybe pick your brain, you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
no, I will definitely.
Yeah.
The other thing I was going to mention to you is you were at Words for Birds in our
Yes.
Zoom from Mitchell Lake, yes?
Yeah, Sunday's reading. Mhm.
Right. The woman who put it together, who was the educator at Mitchell Lake, who is leaving to go back to the classroom, is someone I think that Gemini ought to kind of keep an eye on.
Sure.
Because before this, she had listed among her bio stuff that she had worked with the Poetry Society of America and the Harriet Archive. And I mean, she was
Oh, cool.
she was a library archivist working with that, all of that incredible material. So
What's your name?
I knew you were going to ask me that, and it's kind of it's actually, it may be in a file next to me.
Oh yeah, no worries. You can just email it to me at a later point, Jim.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I
Yeah.
will, along with
Sounds really interesting.
Rose Katakalos's poem.
Oh yeah, no, that's super great. I'm very happy for Rose.
Oh God, you got to read this poem. It's to die for.
No, and I'm so glad. Yeah, I will definitely pass that on to William, what Corey said. And I'm sure William would love to talk to you. He's getting very busy with it. It's him and two musicologists. And yeah, he's kind of reaching out to all these different kinds of writers to see what their expertise is in the music world and what they'd be best to write on. But it's a collection of essays.
Great.
Most of them new essays.
Great,
Yeah, so it's a project. Yeah.
cool.
Okay, I'm gonna hop off for 1 second and deal with my.
Hey, Jim.
Hello there.
That was a good exhale. Less than an hour left though, and you're powering through and you're doing a great job. So
Thank
good
you.
job, teach.
By the way, I was thinking yesterday, vocab, about that. I miss your hugs. You give the best hugs.
She does.
Thanks. It's been good to be able to hug some people again that I haven't had a chance to hug, and hopefully more of that will happen in the near future. So yeah. Who's here right now?
Did you have a good vacation?
My vacation was cool, but what I came back to after my vacation is way cooler, and I'm probably going to want to talk to Gemini Inc. a little bit about it. Hold on 1 second. Let me finish this message. Okay, so I don't know who's in here. I can't talk about it publicly yet, But the foundation that grants poets laureate the grant money that they can win so they can do their projects and stuff like that. I won a grant with them. So it's major. And I just can't talk about it yet in public, but I was trying to figure out how I was gonna get the city of San Antonio to give me, all this money so I can get it done, but they gave me the money, so I don't have to worry about it. And I'm like, well, here we go. God has just been blessing me so much. I can't even believe all the good things that are happening in my life.
And you 100% deserve it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, friend. I'm glad that I don't ever feel worthy of anything, but I believe that sometimes my hard work is like, boom, I worked hard. But this is just community coming together, man, and batting for me and working for me and working with me. Bernie and Sheila came through, and a couple of my friends came through, and we put together a solid proposal for my idea. And
That's awesome.
And I was competing against, I don't even know how many poets laureate, probably 100 at least, from all over this nation, sending in proposals. So, and they've had all year to sit at home and think about this stuff, just like me, so I'm grateful.
That's great.
I don't know, but you are the poet laureate that we needed right now.
Thank you
Definitely.
very, very, very much. Yeah, I remember when God was like, you're going to do it and you're going to do it now. He said it just like that. And I was like, okay, God. And then, the two of you wrote me amazing letters. So you and Jim, like.
The easiest letter in the world to write.
Yep. And I was listening to your music the whole time I was writing it. I was like,
Yay! What a good backdrop. That's a cool backdrop. I like that idea. Now that makes me swell with pride knowing that, I was your soundtrack.
You bet.
And Erika's sister Gabi and her husband George, you know them,
Yeah.
George and Gabi.
Yeah.
They asked me if I would be a godmother to Luz Maya yesterday. And I got to hold a baby for the first time in over a year. And that was almost more tremendous than winning this grant, just like holding a real human little baby child. So good. Felt so good.
Well, congratulations, Erika.
Yeah. You got two sisters with little ones.
I know. You're so cute.
I haven't seen Ronnie's baby. I want to see Ronnie's baby. I want to meet Ronnie's baby.
She's like 3 times the size of Luz Maya.
I heard yesterday they were like, she's like this much and her legs dangle when she's held and la la la. I'm like, is she a milk baby? Is she a breastfed baby?
She was a breastfed baby, but not anymore. I think she has her dad's side. They're large genes.
Well, I'm so happy for your sister, Erika, and for George.
Yeah.
So happy for them.
That's great.
Yeah.
They're such
They love
fine
it.
people, such sweet people.
Yeah, they love it. She looks
All
like a
right,
little-
y'all. If we can come on back, anybody there who, I don't know, my voice is, if you hear my voice, come back, come into the light. Oh my God, poltergeist. Come into the light,
Caroline, come into the light.
My brothers always say they named me after that. My brothers named me when they were 7 and 10. So they always joke and say that's who they named me after.
Now I totally want to watch Poltergeist, like after making that joke. Oops.
I've never heard anybody ever say that. I
Really?
totally
Come
want
into
to
the
watch
light, Caroline.
Poltergeist.
I always say that when it's like dark and someone's like,
No, not that.
Right.
What Florinda just said. I totally want to watch Poltergeist after saying that. No one has ever said that to me. Like, oh, I want to go watch Poltergeist. No, no.
That movie was really, that's a great movie. Like
It still scares
bad.
me.
Huh?
It still scares me. I'm a big chicken, but I'll watch Poltergeist.
I can't do scary movies at all. None. I'll watch the trailers all day though.
Have you heard of how many crazy things happen on set during filming it and after?
Yeah, I heard of, I remember seeing that like in Star Magazine in the 90s or 80s. All right, y'all, are we back? I can't tell if we're back or not.
Mhm.
I
Hold
see-
on, let me check. Yes, everyone seems to be
Quick
back.
question. Has everyone read Laura Van Proyen's new book of poems?
Not yet.
Francis in the Field. It is spectacular. It's gorgeous.
Oh,
Beautiful book. We love her
Okay,
dearly.
Nina's popping back in. Let me give her a minute. Okay. All right, y'all. Well, we talked about poltergeist. We talked about breastfed babies with large genes from large family members, and then we also talked about what else? Oh, Laura Van Proyen's amazing book. No, I haven't. I feel like I can't. I feel like I just need an app to keep track of everybody in the community's books, and where I can automatically just order everybody's book, because it's just like there's just so many things going on social media. All right, everybody. Here is where I get to answer Carol's super brilliant question. So the 4 pillars at every level. Now, any other thoughts? I know we stepped away for a bit. Any other thoughts on the 4 pillars while you were away getting your coffee?
I just really appreciated what Jim's brought up with those. Like, I started just writing them down, to be honest, Jim. But like trust, expression, the expression like self, and then also expression with community, memory, social justice, like all of those, I was just like, I know we do them, but just making sure that as we're going forward, like just continuing to have them with us as we're going forward with our vision and our mission. I think that's great.
Well, and Carol, justice and fairness, which seem to be at the top of the list for people in Crier, clearly, are also always on the list for any student who feels disempowered by being a student and not being in control of their own lives. I mean, that's it. In fact, the relationship of teacher to student, which is why our relationship with them is different. And it's what makes our relationship with them special and important.
So one thing that I think is coming to me as I'm listening to you all talk about this, like relationships with students. And as I've mentioned, like when I meet with funders or partners, I talk about relationships, but I think that we maybe the way we articulated our curriculum with the 4 pillars, I think it would probably be helpful to articulate how we build relationships with our students and with our partners and the community. That might be something we will look at. I know that we partner with a partnership through whom we work with Excel Beyond the Bell, and they are all about, the power of one positive adult role model in a child's life. And they also talk a lot about building relationships. I know that Erika and Carol have both brought up stuff about SEL, social emotional learning. One thing that I think Alexandra and I might want to look at, and I'm kind of taking from just the conversation you all are having, is that maybe we need to sit down and articulate that a little more too. How we build that relationship, and how we bring those walls down. How does that sound to you all?
Yes, it underpins everything.
Right.
I mean, that's it. You don't get further without it.
Well, it's the key that unlocks everything, because you can't do the 4 pillars at all if that first thing isn't there, which is like trust.
Right.
Yeah, I would say the tool that I use the most is demonstration. I feel like I'm going to come in the classroom and I'm going to disarm everybody who has a wall up immediately by either singing to them, rapping for them, performing a piece for them. How can we tell these students you are capable of doing this if we don't show them that we ourselves have done it? Expression, I can't like yell enough about how awesome the fact that I think it is that Jim piped up about saying the need to express ourselves. People are dying, killing themselves and killing other people because they don't know how to properly express themselves. And I feel like if anything could be added to the pillar, that could be, or mission or something, somewhere in all of these core values, something in there is this idea of the expression and how that is just so a need of all human beings. And that's what we're here to do. We're going to help them do it. But I feel like the best way to disarm people and get them to trust you is just show them, look, I showed up and I'm going to make myself vulnerable by showing you this is my art. And once you do that, that's going to more than likely 9 times out of 10 fascinate them and make them either they're going to be intimidated maybe, but more than anything, it will inspire them. And then they're going to be like, well, I want to do that too.
Well, I will
Hey,
definitely, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I agree with vocab, and maybe to specify if it's something that gets added to constructive self-expression, because being harmful is self-expression, but it's not constructive. So maybe be specific about the constructive, creative self-expression.
I think that those are all really good comments, and y'all are giving me a lot to think about. So thank you. Any other things before we move on to the 4 pillars at every level? No? Okay. So we looked at kinder, 3rd grade, middle school, high school, and adult. Now, one thing before I jump into this that I want to show you, and I'm actually going to pop out of the PowerPoint real quick, is, oops, sorry. I want to show you a project that I've been working on, and Sophia's actually going to have to help me finish it because I started and I haven't finished. So what I did is I had my intern, Diana, who worked with me during this school year, I had her go through all of the TEKS, text, whatever, however, I listen, in Laredo, they said TEKS, so that's what I'm calling it, okay? So I had her go through all of the English language arts TEKS, and I had her highlight all of the ones that pertain to what we do. What I did is I then dropped them into this Excel spreadsheet and I aligned them and I said, okay, what is it falling under? Does it align with read it, write it, share it, form, ambition, language, polish? So I did this. We are doing this from K through 12th grade. And the reason that we did this is that Carol asked, in addition to the question she asked about the 4 pillars, and she said, what's developmentally appropriate? Which is a great question. So the reason why we went through the TEKS is so that I could see, okay, well, what are they expected to do in kinder, 3rd, 5th, 12th, etc. So that this has been like a huge project that I've been working on, where I've been aligning everything. And you can see here, one of the things that I found really interesting is that the most difficult TEK in all of language arts from kinder through 12th grade is this one called Author's Purpose and Craft. And this is, it says students use critical inquiry to analyze the author's choices and how they influence and communicate meaning within a variety of texts. Then they have to apply it to their own work. That's exactly what we're having them do. We do the most difficult TEK in the entire language arts curriculum for Texas. That is exactly what you all do every day. So what I'm about to show you came from my work on these, like aligning all of these skills with what we are doing. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. So now let's look at this at every level. So kindergarten. What I did is I created lessons for kinder and the other grades, and I asked myself, okay, if I were teaching this, how would I teach it? So this is kindergarten. What would form be? Would be students listen to a fairy tale. That's a genre that is covered in kinder, and create their own as a 6-page picture book that includes the story elements, characters, setting, conflict, resolution. What is the ambition? Students read their own fairy tale picture books to the class and or their families. Students incorporate specific nouns, strong verbs, and adjectives in their fairy tale. That would be what language would, that's what's appropriate in terms of language expectations at the kindergarten level. That's what's covered, nouns, verbs, and adjectives. For polish, it would be students edit with a focus on capitalization, spacing, spelling, ending punctuation, and I didn't include this here, but this is probably more important, handwriting. Is it legible? Okay, now, if you don't know, I used to be a kindergarten teacher, and one of the things that we went over every single day was we would say, okay, we're starting a sentence, you need to start with a capital letter, or don't forget every time the sentence starts with a capital letter, and you need to put spaces between their words. Their spelling might be phonetic spelling, that's okay. That's developmentally appropriate for them to have their words spelled phonetically. But are they starting with a capital, have spaces, and have either a period or question mark or exclamation point at the end? Questions, comments? Is this clear or not clear? It is clear? And again, like this would be the, so one thing I do wanna to maybe differentiate a bit is that you might have an ambition goal for the entire class, right? Where you're like, okay, we're gonna create over the next 2 to 3 weeks, this picture book. But then you might have individual ambition goals for each student. Like there might be a student that maybe you have to put 2 students together because they're struggling, or maybe, you know, you have a super precocious kid and they wanna do 2 books. That, I think that one thing you need to think about as you're creating your curriculum and you're like putting it into action in the classroom is looking at what are the goals for form, ambition, language, and polish at the class level, and then what is appropriate for students, for each student. Does that make sense at the different, you know, levels? Questions, comments?
Can I just add a quick thing, Florinda?
Yeah, of course.
I think this is all a great example of how all of these pillars are very elastic. And the needs of your students come first. And this is a tool to help you, you know, it's what you've been already doing. It is just helping us articulate the different parts of the writing process. And our hope is these 4 pillars are just another tool for you to help meet the needs of your students, you know, by giving you some of these guideposts through each part of the writing process. And polish can be something just like this because you have kindergartners and that's what's right at that level. And then we want to hear from all of you about, you know, new and different ways that you're thinking about these 4 pillars as you teach them. Like that's really helpful feedback for us.
So 3rd grade. So I got stuck on the idea of fairy tales. So you're gonna see that, like, I'm gonna like expand it all the way to adult, okay? So for form, they would read a fractured fairy tale and create their own as a 6-frame comic. And I found this little book that I thought was cute, Who Pushed Humpty Dumpty? And it's a noir approach to Humpty Dumpty. I thought that was kind of cool. And if you don't know what a fractured fairy tale is, it's a fairy tale that's, you know, turned around on its head. It's, you know, modernized. Starts to break the rules of the fairy tale a little bit. So that might be, you know, looking at fractured fairy tales, that's in the TEKS. And they create their own as a 6-frame comic. And again, looking at those storytelling elements. Sorry, I see chat going on. You know, again, looking at those storytelling elements. For ambition, students set the goal of completing the writing process for this project in time for publication in a comic zine. Now, again, that would be the class goal. And of course, you would work with different students. If there's students that are struggling, you would set realistic goals with them for whatever, you know, whatever they can meet. Students incorporate dialogue and onomatopoeia into their comic. That would be language. Students would, for polish, we have students edit with a focus on capitalization, spelling, ending punctuation. And this is important. I've taught this lesson before, the 6-frame comic. Where do you put speech bubbles? Where should they be? So those are examples of polish, right? And again, one thing I also want you to think about is you can't cover all the language things. There's too many things, but pick, when after we've met with the partner and I sit with you and we're doing a strategy session and I tell you, hey, this is what the partner has asked for. These are the goals that they want us to meet. Then we can say, okay, what language skills are the things that or the craft skills in language that we can address? Does that make sense? So let's look at, this is middle school, high school. Okay, students read a twisted fairy tale. What does that mean? It has a dark element to it, okay? Think more along the lines of like the original Grimm's fairy tales. Students they create their own as a 6-scene, 1-act play. Not as hard as it sounds. Ambition, students set the goal of completing the play and presenting it at a stage reading for the public. This could be maybe just one play. They all write one play together. Doesn't have to necessarily be each child writes an individual play. It could be writing the entire play as a class. Language, students use slang to differentiate characters' dialogue. Polish, students edit with a focus on play formatting. That's a huge thing when you're writing a play or a screenplay, is the formatting. And refining punctuation to guide the actor's delivery. Questions, comments? Okay, the adult, all of it, listen, all the fairy tale stuff was just so I could get to this book, which is Carmen Maria Machado's In the Dream House. It's a great book if you haven't read it, okay? It has some really cool stuff. So this would be for the adult classroom. Students read a memoir novel excerpt that incorporates fairy tale elements. That's something that she does absolutely brilliantly. She is one of my favorite writers. If you don't know her, please go read her. She's amazing. Now, the ambition would be students use fairy tale elements to heighten themes and dramatic tension throughout their own prose piece. Students examine how word choice imbues imagery with a fairy tale element. What specific words is Carmen Maria Machado using? How is she framing this? How is she incorporating that element? How can I incorporate that element into my own work? Polish, students edit with a focus on tightening their prose at the sentence level. Questions, comments? I see Jim's wheels turning.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So I know with grade level students, we have kind of the TEKS as a guide. I know that some ambition for adults is to be published or something to that effect. So are we using what publishers are looking for as kind of a guide? So when those adults are taking our classes, they know that they're kind of getting something extra with their workshop.
That's a great question. And I think that that's probably more applicable to what we're seeing in like the public classes. Wouldn't you agree, Alexandra?
Yeah, no, I think, Amina, we would totally want to be, we often do that in our public classes. Like we'll introduce people to literary journals that we know about, and we'll look at the submissions page and we'll give them a sense of what editors are asking for. So we can give them very practical hands-on advice about the market or the world, all the different places they could be sending their work. And giving them resources for that. So that can be something that would be a wonderful part of ambition, of the ambition part of the class. Does that answer your question at all?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna go into breakout rooms. Now, what we're gonna do is you're gonna share, I hope you have a lesson plan or two available. And I know I sent out the 4 pillars activity sheet. What you're gonna do is you're gonna go into 2 breakout rooms and you're gonna look at your lesson and say, what pillars does it have? How could I maybe emphasize this pillar more? how can I use these pillars to kind of refine or change up my lesson plan? Okay, so that's what you're going to be focusing on when you go into your breakout room. I'm going to stop the share real quick, and I'm going to put you into breakout rooms. And also let me make sure that multiple participants can, okay, let me try this. It's been like a month since I did this, so let's see if I can do this. I will assign manually. Okay. So Alexandra, I'm going to put you in one. Okay, so we are going to have, let me see what time it is. It's 2:33. I'm going to give you all 15 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, and then I'll come check on you all.
Yeah, I think we kind of talk about maybe, well, she's here, so she can talk to us. She can guide
I'm
us.
here.
Look at that. We're so lucky.
Okay, so let me pull up the sheet real quick that I sent you all. I don't even have it pulled up. Okay, where am I? Sorry, y'all. It's been a crazy week.
I have it pulled up, so I can go ahead and drop it in the chat and I can share it.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
I have it in front of me, so.
Were you able to pull it up, Sophia?
Yes, sorry, I was just finding the correct version because I think I downloaded it twice, but I'm going to go ahead and drop it in now.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was about to start singing the Jeopardy music.
I also have it pulled up here if you want me to share.
There we go. Sorry about the wait on that.
So the big thing you want to look at is how does, I don't know who wants to go first with a lesson that they, and what I would prefer is that if it's one of your go-to lessons, that would be the best thing. And how does it align with the 4 pillars? Who would like to go first?
I guess I will, because nobody wants to go first, so I'll have to throw myself on the gauntlet, to do this. So to do that, I'm gonna start with, I didn't pick go-to lessons, but I worked with Carol on Confluence, and I think I picked the stuff from day 1 and day 2. I printed out two things, but so we start with the Pledge of Respect that we do that kind of sets the guidelines for respecting themselves, respecting their arts, and respecting the thoughts of the people around them so that they don't get into this mode of self-deprecation, and it helps to build their confidence or whatever. And then since we were doing Confluence, we asked them to introduce themselves and talk about a time where they went to the river, a river, and visited, and a memory from that. Carol is really great. She comes up with a slide with our expectations and goals for that day, and she's presents the slide to them so they'll know coming into the class, this is what we want to accomplish, this is what we want to do. And then we showed them some aerial footage, drone footage, and then we gave them a writing warm up, write 4 lines with the sentence starter, I gather the rain. And then we asked them to pick their favorite line from the 4 lines that they wrote and contributed to a group piece. Then we took a break. Then we came back. We read a mentor text of one of my poems, Ask the River. We did a Q&A and talked about the poem and broke it down. Then we did a blackout poem where they picked 10 to 15 words from my poem to create their own poem, and they shared that poem with the class.
So I love that example. And I always like the fact that you use not just mentor text, but your own like writing models. So just to clarify, like a writing model is something that you wrote, right? Or it can also be something you're writing in class with them. So I always love that you use that vocab. So let's look at that lesson of her poem, and then they black out stuff, and then they whatever's remaining to build their own poem. Is that correct?
Yes.
So how do you see that? And if you can pull up the activity sheet, how do we see that aligning with the 4 pillars?
We present to them, I guess, the form of my poem and give them that as a blueprint, and then they will work off of that to create their own poem. So I think that covers the form aspect. Ambition, I think it's ambitious in the fact that I shared my own creativity and my own work and used my own poem and gave them that, and then asked them to take that and create something of their own. Language, poetic devices, diction, musicality. Because we took the time to talk about the work and what it meant and have a classroom discussion, I think that could cover the language aspect of it. And the language was pretty much present for them. We also told them if they needed to add some of their own words to make it make sense, like don't just pick these 15 words, but if you need to add something, go ahead and add that, and polish, willing to usability, revision, editing. I don't know. I need some help with polish.
So I'm gonna tell you one thing. So what's gonna happen is you're gonna look at your lessons and you're gonna notice that some of the lessons have like a lot of form, right? But maybe they're lacking a bit in language. Or you might see, wow, this really has a lot of ambition and polish, but it's missing this other thing. I will tell you that I'll give you like a bit of a what's it called? Like a, God, I can't think today, I'm sorry. I'll tell you that the previous session, polish became very clear when everyone was sharing their lessons that polish was the pillar everybody was having the hardest time with. So I will tell you that, okay? One thing, a couple of things are coming to me as I was listening to vocab about your lesson. Like, what are some ways, and I had some things come, but I want to see what Jim and Carol and Sophia think. What's a way that lesson of vocab where the blackout poem, how could form be like extended, that idea of form, where it's past just what your form was?
Well, I will say when I do teach, I tell kids, I give them the free range to say, if you want to write a song, if you want to write a poem, if you want to make it a short story, and opening up their ideas and presenting them that option so that they're not stuck in one form. Because sometimes kids, they think, oh, I'm here to write poems and my poems got to rhyme. They all of them think that. And then they usually raise their hand and say that. And I free them of that burden very quickly and say, hey, I'm not obligating you to write a poem, number one, and then that helps. And then I'm like, it doesn't have to rhyme, but if you want to rhyme, usually I'll say, here's some tools, make a word bank and come up with rhyming words. I set up the classroom to where it's interactive within the students and their peers so that they can work together. And getting back to this for Polish, I feel like the whole thing was a setup for setting. And setting is something, and imagery is something that we talk about a lot, because the whole idea of working at Confluence is you have the river right here to inspire you, and everything is going to be thematically tied to this idea of the river, and you understand that this is the setting that you're working within. And then even difficult words within the text, we take the time to discuss them, and so that they have a better understanding and grasp of the vocabulary with which they're working with. And we do also walk around and look at their work, give them feedback on it as they're walking through it. And, and then they create like also a visual representation, because not only did they make the Blackout poem, we asked them to create art on the page or take it from that page and move it to a new page and create art around it so that they get this whole encompassing idea of the setting in multiple layers.
What are y'all's thoughts? Carol?
I
Jen?
know that vocab, that's true. You always do that with form. Like you, there are those hesitant learners that you're like, it doesn't have to be a poem. You can make it a song. You can make it a rap. And then I've noticed that really brings out like different forms. Vocab's really good about that. She's really like, it pushes me to be better about that, because sometimes I do stick with just like poetry, like, oh, it's this, that. But making it like the different forms and like not just in poetry. It's like it could be a rap, it could be a comic. But I know that's something that we did look at with those particular, with the Blackout. There were the students that picked like, oh, we really like these words. And something that we did have to focus on with them was like, okay, you picked out those words from the Blackout poem, but it doesn't make sense. Or do you have to add something to it to make it your own and to make it like make sense, right? So I think that was something we kind of did with Polish there. I know we can make it, probably extend it on more though, but.
I would use the word continuities in Polish, developing, find, if they gather up stuff and don't have any way to put it together, then they have something, but the minute they assemble, continuities and assembly, I think, are part of Polish. And going from a Blackout to something that means something is polishing. Interestingly, Carol, though I use largely only poetry with my students at choir, it takes them till about 6 or 7 weeks in, when I have not read a single poem that rhymes, to say, I thought poems rhymed, sir. Why don't you bring in a poem? And then I do. But I don't, I'm hitting them with So Much Depends Upon a Red Wheelbarrow, and they're going, this is a poem? This is a poem? So the medium itself is pretty broad, as we know. And I always, vocab, my kids at choir are regularly wanting to write raps. They're wanting to write songs. They're, and they're mad that they're with me and not Erica, because Erica does songs and I have zero musicality, but we try. I think your work, the thematic coherence of place and imagery, and then the assembly issues cover across form, ambition, language, and polish. I would also say when you do breakouts that you're addressing the language piece too, because just the very selection of words by a group of kids is language consciousness. They're not picking them because of the color of them. They're not picking them because they're made of chocolate. They're picking them because of what they mean or sound like, or sometimes they don't even know why they're picking them. I actually think consciousness about why they're picking might be a really useful part.
So thank you, Jim. One thing is we're gonna have to pop out in about a minute or so. One thought that I had about the prompt that you described, vocab, was what if so one thing that I have seen Erica do, and she does the same thing where she provides like, okay, this is the prompt, you can answer in any of these forms. But one thing I think she does really well is that they will have already gone over certain forms. So she'll have already shown them like a haiku, right? And so they already know that form. She has already done maybe flash fiction. Then she's done, what else? She's done free verse. And then I know she'll do maybe like a rhyming, some type of form that rhymes. One idea that came to mind was, I love the idea of definitely giving kids the opportunity to respond in the form that feels best for them. But I think we just need to make sure that we are giving them a chance to learn certain forms. And like, I know the songwriting stuff, that's super amazing. I don't know what that form is like. And I think also some kids, I know they will come up with their own form, just completely outside of any of the forms that we give them. But I do think it's important to make sure that we are providing, like, I think it's good to give them options, but I think you need to make sure that they have forms already in their toolbox, that they are familiar with, what are the characteristics of these like 4 forms before responding. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And I think Carol and I did a really good job, because some days we were like, we're going to focus on comic books today. We're going to focus on legends, and we're going to focus on even going more specific, the genre of horror. We were like, we're going to write scary stories today. And so we're going to tell you the legend of La Llorona. And then we're going to talk about that and give you that and then we talked about literary tools. And that's something else that when I work with Amina, we were like, let's pick out some literary tools for this day specifically. And we're going to present these tools to the students and say, today, we're going to talk about setting and mood or whatever, which ones we automatopoeia or alliteration, whatever. We tell them up front, like, these are the tools we're gonna like. And also something I like to do is write the agenda on the board, and as we go through things, check it off so they can see, hey, we are accomplishing things, and that shows ambition, you know what I'm saying? And so they start to build their self-esteem, like, oh my God, we have goals that we're meeting and we're doing it. And so, yeah, I do agree with you. I also think it sometimes it depends on the body of kids you're working with. Like, obviously Erica works with a very challenging group of kids. Sometimes it's everything within you just to get through a class with challenging kids in that environment. So sometimes I'm like, I don't want to try to limit them specifically to a form, because I just want them to write. My only goal is write something. But I totally agree with you that sometimes we need to give them parameters, and some kids, you can't leave them too wide open because they freak out if you give them just too much openness. You got to say rigidly, here's a sentence structure, poem, fill in the blanks of this, or, because they're just like, Miss, I'm doing it wrong, or this can't be right. And I'm like, yes, it can, it's that agency idea. But I feel like we focused on me and we should move on to someone else.
So Sophia, real quick, and then we're gonna close and we need to all go back into the main room. Go ahead, Sophia.
My point was a little bit longer, but I'll make it as short as I can. I think that's something certain central to languages play. And so one thing that I was thinking of with this blackout poem idea is, say that we have students after they've completed their blackout poem, maybe they put together all of the words, and then if we're going into a longer form, okay, that makes the first paragraph of a longer essay. Or if we're going to learn about a haiku, we circle 3 words there, and that makes the beginning of the first line of the haiku. And that's a way of teaching students that form can be very fluid and can sort of, it can expand into the longer form like an essay or like a short story, and it can go into a shorter form. And that way we're also still teaching students how to maintain the integrity or the cohesion of what they're really trying to say when they write. Sorry, I tried to condense it as
No,
much.
that was brilliant. And that's why she is the Bear County intern for the summer. You just totally showed that. That was great, Sophia. Absolutely. And can you share that right now when we go to the main room?
Absolutely.
I'm gonna pop us all out of there. So I know we couldn't go through all of them as much as I wanted to, because I feel like no matter how much time I have with you all, it's just never enough. Let me move this.
Hey, Mel.
Is everybody back in? All right, so we're running short on time. I'm sorry if y'all are okay to stay a few more minutes, great. If not, we can end right at 3 on the dot. I don't want to take your time. So what were some takeaways that you all had from that activity?
What I liked most is viewing how differently we may structure our lessons and the variety of ways that we can approach the pillars. Like they're just kind of guidelines, and they're things that we do innately anyway. And that we can plan for certain things, but it really is also ultimately up to us and our expertise as the facilitator to recognize where our audience and our students are in kind of this process and be able to guide them through it, and be able to adjust quickly depending on what we're experiencing with the students. So I really enjoyed hearing other processes of how facilitators will problem solve or different things in the midst of their lessons.
Any other thoughts?
I was in a group just now with Andrea. Oh wait, Shira, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Did you want to go?
It's okay. You go ahead. I'll talk after you.
Okay. I was in a group with Andrea and we were discussing her blackout poem lesson, which is where students take one of her texts and then they black it out, and then they create their own text from the words that are left over. And we talked a little bit about how we can teach that form can be very fluid. So we can use one form as a launching pad to teach another form. So an example of that could be that we use the words that are created from the blackout poem and we put them all together, and that is the first paragraph of a longer essay. Or we ask students to circle 3 words, and that creates the first line of a haiku. And that way we're taking a form that students may already be familiar with to teach another form that they may not be already, or that they know but not too well. And we're also trying to teach students how to maintain the integrity of their original message in the first place, which connects to how Gemini Inc. is teaching how to write. Why do we write? Because we have something to say. how are these different ways that we can say it.
And that's why you are the intern that was chosen for this project.
Shira, did you want to say something?
Pretty good.
I just, it seemed as though the pillars are kind of intuitively already in the lesson plans that we looked at, and that there are also overlaps in so that one thing that can be looked at as ambition could also be looked at as language. So it's you don't necessarily need to go in designing something in a way of trying to fulfill the 4 pillars. You're probably already designing something that contains the 4 pillars, and then you can go in and decide how you're going to orient different parts of it.
So one thing is that it's 2:58, and there are 2 points that I wanted to make about the 4 pillars. Thank you for your comments. Y'all are just so smart. Can I just say it's just so fun to just be around smart people and just like listen to y'all say smart stuff. But 2 things I wanted to say is that no, you don't have to have all the 4 pillars don't have to be in every single lesson. I'm not going to be there like checking boxes to make sure that every lesson is like that. Obviously, you're going to have some where you're emphasizing more language. Others are going to be more form. Some will, maybe have all 4 of them. The thing that I do want to ask though, and I'm going to be really straightforward about it. I have felt at times that some of the lessons are a bit stale. And one of the things that I do want to see is I think the 4 pillars provide an opportunity to revisit some of your tried and true prompts. And how can I tweak them? Like the way that Amina was saying, well, how can I can kind of, morph it so that it's more focused on this thing. I can like integrate this thing that I hadn't thought of. And I'll give you a good example of that, acrostic poems. Acrostic poems, I understand, are a great like beginner poem for reluctant writers. My issue with them is that I feel sometimes they don't have enough of a craft element to them. Like the craft is not strong enough in that in the acrostic. In the previous session that I had with the 8 other instructors, one of the things that we talked about was like, how could you amp up the craft in an acrostic? And so I know one writer said, oh, well, each of the first words is the first line of a poem. Another person said, well, what if, each word in the acrostic, that's the ending of the poem. So those are things that I want you to think about as you're looking at your lessons. I know that, we have lessons that we're like, wow, I always do this lesson. But one thing I do want to see is, how can we change them? How can we play with them so that we're making sure that we are challenging our students? Because that is one thing. I know in previous trainings, I've talked about rigor. I mentioned that in a training 2 years ago, I talked about increasing the rigor. While the 4 pillars are definitely a guideline, they're very elastic, as Alexandra said. However, they're also a way of holding both yourself accountable. Am I making sure that I hit polish enough? Am I making sure that I have form enough? The other thing is that I do want you to see it as a way to kind of revamp or relook at some of your prompts, especially the ones that are those tried and true prompts. Does that make sense? Any questions? I know there was a chat. Let me pull up the chat real quick. I see a comment. Depth and rigor. Yes. We want to make sure that we are challenging the students. Part of the reason why I've been doing that TEKS alignment, and one thing I do want to get for you all is like a cheat sheet, like what should you be able to expect from the kids in 3rd grade, 5th grade, 7th grade? Like I do want to create that for you. That's something I'm going to have Sophia helping with this summer. Any questions or comments on what I just said? I know that we're coming up on 3:02. If you need to get off, absolutely feel free to get off the call. If you want to continue this conversation for a few more minutes, that's fine too.
I just want to thank you, Florinda, for that graphic that you did. I'm going to use that as like my template now for my lesson planning, because for me, it'll really like guide it straightforward. But thank you for creating that graphic. It was awesome.
Well, thank you, Carol, because the graphic would have never been created if you had not asked me some very hard but necessary questions.
I appreciate you taking them into consideration.
Any comments about that, about the revamping some of your prompts? Is that some, does that sound like something you want to do?
Can we
Yeah.
do like a PD on that, where we're bringing a lesson? Because in a way, I feel like if I were trying to reapproach a lesson that is tried and true, I'm still gonna have the same mentality about it. So it would be helpful to have just kind of how we just shared, going through our lessons, some other opinions and different approaches to help with the creativity and expanding it. So I think having more time dedicated to actually attacking one of our lessons would be helpful.
Absolutely.
No, that's a great, I love that idea, Amina. Can I just chime in quick here?
Absolutely.
You know, one thing we want to do, and it's in our strategic vision or our supportive verbiage, is to take the abstract out of craft. And the point is that craft empowers your students. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. It's just how many goddamn writing tools can you give your kids? Can you give your adults? Okay. And so think of that, you know what I mean? Which can be kind of fun, you know what I mean? What kind of tools could I push out of this exercise or prompts? Maybe there's a new one that I haven't thought of that could come out of this for my students. So, and the idea that, you know, you might find you're great at 3 of the pillars, but maybe one of them is just not your forte, and is a chance for you to dive and be like, okay. And I love that idea, getting ideas from fellow teaching artists on how can I add to my toolbox? You know what I mean? To open up how I teach this. And, you know, like any writer, teachers are the same. Like you always are trying to build that toolbox. So we're open to any ideas on how to you know, to help you in that process, or for you to share ideas with us on that.
And one thing that did come out from the other session with the other instructors is that they did say we struggle with polish. Polish is super hard because it's that editing and like walking students through a revision. And is that really the word that you want to use? And I know some of the instructors in there, they brought up vocab and said that vocab had a great way that she approached. Like, I think that you had like a set of guidelines vocab, like questions, I think that you had students that kind of work through when looking at their pieces. Is that true?
Maybe in times past I have done that, not necessarily. Oh, my editing checklist. Yes.
That's
My editing checklist. That's what I was like, what is she talking about? Yes, exactly that. And I told them, you don't have to use all of these tools all of the time, but you have to use
Right.
some of these tools all of the time. And it was just a long list of alliteration, imagery, sensory details, blah, 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 blah. And just a whole bunch of, and it wasn't even all of our literary devices, but a vast number of them. And I'm like, make sure you're incorporating some of these in your work at all times, because, and I gave them an example of, you know, I gave them a basic sentence and then I reimagined that sentence, like remixed it with using some literary devices in it. And I was like, which one of these sentences are more interesting? And when you put it in context in just like a very practical way, then kids grasp it and they're like, oh, I can do this. I'm like, just adding something as simple as telling them to go back and put sensory details and then explaining what that is. And sometimes writing a group piece, and this is something you were very valuable in teaching me, like if you start by writing a group piece, then kids say, then you tell them, hey, we wrote this as a group. Now you can do it as an individual because you saw that we could accomplish this.
Mm-hmm. One other thing about polish is that I did observe Sarah and Carol And one of the site visits that I did with them was them doing the editing process with their students, and they did a fantastic job. One of the things that, speaking of PD, because I know Amina brought that up, is, you know, I think it would be very helpful to have one training, and I would, you know, choose the teaching artist that would lead this training, where they talk about polish and how they help students get through the revision process. Because honestly, I think revision is probably one of the most difficult things to help students get through. And I think having you all come together and bring your ideas and kind of show what you've done and how it worked for you, I think that that might be beneficial. What do you all think? Thoughts?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, it's 3:08. I don't want to take more of your time. So if we can just do one quick check, a quick checkout. Hold on. There. Oh, that's the rubric for measuring 4 pillars. So we're not going to write checkout. What is one thing you're taking with you from today's session?
I'll go because I need to go. I appreciate what Sophia said about extending form and using one form to teach another. Like, that idea was like, and I've done it in times past, but now I'm like, I want to do it a whole lot more. So thank you, Sophia, for that.
Amina says ambition.
Are we supposed to write that in the chat and not say it out loud?
It's up to you. You can
Oh,
use whatever you want.
I say ambition just because I want to be more intentional about realizing the goals of the individual. So I think I'm do pretty well with like class goals, like bigger goals, but then doing that differentiation is something I would like to focus more on.
Who else? Erika?
Oh, I was just gonna say ambition. I think like, you know, I use the whole introduction of intention when we write, but it doesn't quite come at the beginning. And I think I want to jumpstart my classes from now on with that. And I also love the extending form. I didn't even think about that, and that's amazing. So thank you.
Jim?
I appreciate that the pillars are malleable, and I also am pleased that people know that their student sense of self, the empowerment of our students and their sense of self through their writing, clearly, but are important basis for everything we do.
Who have I missed? Shira said challenge.
Okay, I'll go. No. I think the form, I think I actually do pretty good with the editing and revision because it was like drilled into me in my academic life. I kind of, you know, drill it back into my kids. No, I really want them to focus on that. But the form, like, I think for a long time, just being honest, like working with the program I was so much about journaling and so much about just expressing yourself. I'm like, okay, Carol, you have another side of you that you do know form really well in my full-time teaching past that I can kind of like merge the two better and marry them two more. So it's really like challenging me to work on that this summer. So thank you for that.
Any other thoughts? Anybody that I missed? Sophia?
Yeah, I can go. I think something that I'm taking away from today's session is how important it is to tailor our vision and our expectations to the groups that we're working with, while also being able to recognize that there's nothing about like the age level or the education level of whoever we're working with that says that they can't meet and exceed the pillars that we're judging their writing with, or not judging their writing, but that we're hoping to work with we're all collaborating together.
Alexandra?
I guess I just take away whatever, just the rich interchange of ideas and creativity in this group. Just love it.
Shira, did you want to expand on challenge?
Well, I just really approach teaching creative writing like that I am trying to challenge my students to see things in different ways. And so that's like that's part of my ambition for them and myself to achieve as a teacher. And the different things that everybody shared, I saw that everybody had a different way, a different approach to facilitating discovery, for their students to discover, something that they hadn't noticed before. So restructuring things.
Thank you. So honestly, the biggest thing that I'm leaving with is just like being able to be in a space with you, even though it's virtual. That is like honestly what I'm taking. And I'm just like, right, I'm the luckiest person in the world to oversee such amazing people. So I don't want to take any more of your time. I had a funny video I was going to show you. We don't have time for it. I'm going to email you the survey for this training. I'm sorry that we went over time. I will include the link to the video there so you can watch it on your own time. It's a video from this comedian that I really love, who always, for me, he captures what it is to be a teacher. So I will send that to you all. Thank you so much for coming today. You all have given us a lot to think about, and I will be in touch soon. Have a great weekend. Happy Mother's Day. Be good to your
Thank you,
mothers.
Florinda.
Bye,
Keep it
everyone.
Everybody
Thank you,
unmute
everyone.
and thank Florinda.
Happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
Big-
Happy
Bye.
Mother's
Thank
Day.
Happy Mother's Day,
Florinda.
everyone.